It's 2004. I'm 18. I'm in college. I went to Tirumala Tirupati Devasthanam Sri Venkateshwara College at University of Delhi South Campus. It's a foreign language even to us, to those foreigners of you in the crowd. It's foreign to me as well. Now, those of you who don't know enough about Delhi University is that it's basically divided into two campuses. There is North Campus, which is in the north of the city. And that's where your really blue-blooded, pedigreed colleges are there. You know, St. Stephen's and Hindu and all those colleges that people aspire to go to, or people across the country have heard of them. And then there's South Campus, which is in the south of the city, where you have the relatively new colleges, you know, the ones that opened up much later. Now, these colleges aren't that different in terms of quality of education, but there is a marked difference in how they're perceived. You know, so, you know, it's like, oh my God, he's a Stephanian. I say I'm from Sri Venkateshwara College. What? You know, I'm also on my college's debate team, and me and my debate partner, whose name is also Dhruv, and will henceforth be referred to as Junior Dhruv for clarity's sake. We were on our way to a really big, fancy debate at the National Law School in Bangalore. Now, the thing about these debates is that they're not like your usual debates. You don't get a pre-prepared topic. You don't have one person speaking for, one person speaking against. These are largely extempore debates, and they're based on what is called a parliamentary format. So both me and Junior Dhruv will either be part of the government, where we'll be Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister, and we will be part of the opposition, where we'll be opposition and Deputy Leader of Opposition. And our job is to do what Parliament is supposed to do, which is to discuss issues without throwing chairs at each other. And you don't know what the topic of a debate is going to be till such time you actually enter the venue of the debate. And when you come from Tirumala Tirupati Devasthanam Sri Venkateshwara College and you're going to a big fancy debate happening at National Law School in Bangalore, where you're not even introduced by your college name because no one can pronounce it. You're literally introduced as Dhruv and Dhruv. There is a bit of a chip on your shoulder, and you kind of want to show the big boys that you belong there at this debating event. Which is why we decided, Junior Dhruv and I, that one of the best ways to prepare for this debate was to take a train ride from Delhi to Bangalore, so that we had that 36 hours that it takes to get from a train from Delhi to Bangalore. We'd have those 36 hours to prepare strongly for our debate. So we booked ourselves on the Karnataka Mail. We booked ourselves into second-class sleeper, not AC, because when you're in college, every rupee counts. Those of you who have traveled by Indian Railways obviously know that it's arranged in like a 6-seat arrangement, right? So you have your 2 seats that are aligned across the breadth of the carriageway and the 2 seats on top. Then you have the slightly antisocial side berths. And so we booked ourselves the antisocial side berths because we wanted to be able to discuss our debate topics without disturbing our co-passengers and also without being disturbed by them. Now, at this time, I have started experiencing 2 things for the very first time in my life. I have just started smoking, and I'm going through my first case of unrequited love for a girl at my college. Kanika. Oh boy. So, as you can understand, between my packet of classic regulars, that chip on my shoulder about the Stephanians, and my teenage mind trying to comprehend feelings beyond its understanding, I really did not have the inclination to process anything else. Which is why, when me and Junior Dhruv met our co-passengers on that train, young family of 4, I lost interest in them as soon as polite introductions were over. Those of you who never traveled by Indian Railways before, obviously the first unspoken rule of Indian Railways is you always introduce yourselves to your co-passengers. Second unspoken rule of Indian Railways is you never accept any food they give you because it could be drugged and you would be robbed of everything you own. But we went through the first rule and the second rule also. Not only that, but because as human beings we need to feel, we feel the need to be comfortable in our surroundings. For my comfort, I felt that I needed to form a complete image of this family in my head based on the 2-minute conversation that I've had with him. So the father, male, patriarch, whoever, slightly stern, 40-ish, square-jawed, open shirt, hair hanging out. He's probably a mid-level government employee. The woman, early 30s at most, typical Indian housewife, cooks, cleans, raises the children. Theirs is an arranged marriage, obligatory sex, the whole 9 yards, There are 2 children, a boy and a girl, around 10 and 12, I guessed. So, as the train begins to leave Delhi, Dhruv and I decided to strap ourselves and buckle down and prepare for our debate. We discussed serious topics like Article 377, the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, philosophical topics like it's not women but men who need liberation. We got through a few of these issues until finally a combination of soft late October winter sunshine and the gentle rocking motion of the Indian Railways, which is one of the strongest sedative agents known to man, finally took effect. And Junior Dhruv climbed up into his bunk. I pulled seniority on the lower one. He climbed up into his bunk for a nap. This left me alone to contemplate the pros and cons of not having the balls to tell Kanika how I felt about her. So I grabbed my cigarettes and my Discman, it's 2004, and headed to the door to grab a smoke. That's another beauty of Indian Railways. It's perfectly fine to stand at the open door of a moving train and just hang out. So there I am, standing by the door, Jagjit Singh singing Jhuki Jhuki Si Nazar into my ears, and just watching the countryside go by, with that soundtrack of that tatak, 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 Now, from where I'm standing, I'm standing like this, doors open there, trains going there, scenery's going back, that. I just happen to have a view of the berth on which sat the woman of the family. So, I'm smoking like that, and I see her, and she's sitting there, the head of one of her children on her lap, and she's stroking his/her head, because I couldn't figure out who it was. And she's engaged in some random discussion with her husband. Now, as it happens in these situations, like it's happening right now, you look at someone in a room full of people, and you look at someone, and your eyes meet for a minute, and then they move on, and there's no connection as such. So that's what happened, I was looking in her direction, our eyes met for a while, I looked away, she looked away, and that was that. You know that feeling when you're being watched? Allow me to rephrase. No, not just being watched, but observed closely. Yeah, I got that. It's because after a good 20 seconds, I felt the need to look in a direction again. It's what happens when someone stares at you. You feel the need to look at them. It's this subconscious connection that you have. So I'm smoking, Jagjit, and all that stuff is happening. And this time, I turn and I look in her direction. And it's a lock. There is no scope for any lateral movement. She is looking right at me, and I have no option but to look right at her. Everything else, though, is still the same. Jagjit is still singing, cigarette still burning, the head of the child is still in her lap, she's still stroking that head, she's still talking to her husband, but it's like this weird triangle is happening. I'm looking at her, she's looking at me, husband's looking at her, she's still talking to him. Needless to say, it's slightly bizarre. Now, what do? Do I acknowledge the situation? Do I go do I do that? Do I pretend it didn't happen? Because it's a little pointless at this time, because we've had that little I'm staring at you moment. I decided that the safest and the best thing to do would be to continue smoking standing at the door. So I smoked that cigarette. I have never ever observed a cigarette in such minute detail ever in my life as I did with that one. And as I was doing that, I wasn't looking at her anymore because I was trying to avoid the awkward eye contact. I was staring out the door. But now, I let all those images of her be processed at a slightly slower rate than I had before. So, I'm scanning through images in my head and pretty eyes, nice smile, long, delicate fingers. Definitely older. I know, that's what I thought. She's older, but she's definitely not the least attractive woman I've ever met. And that in my brain was like, what? No, wait, stop this. Okay, this is ridiculous. Let's stop this. So I stopped it and I finished my smoke and I went quickly back to my berth without looking at her or anyone else. And Junior Dhruv was still snoring up on the upper berth. So I decided the best thing to do right now would be just to go off to sleep myself. So I did that. Jagjit still singing into my ears. I'm lying down. Kanika, college love of my life. She's walking towards me. She gets closer and closer. And then when she's finally walked right up to me, she says, "We don't have much time." "No, we don't have much time at all," I reply. "Life is short." "No, we really don't have much time," she says. Except this time she's shaking me. You know that moment when you're dreaming and something happens in your real life and that somehow manifests itself into your dream, but that manifestation is so sudden and so strange, that's when you realize you're dreaming. So yeah, that happened. Everything was fine and brilliant and great and romantic till such time Kanika shakes me. Almost like she's trying to wake me up. And that's when I did wake up. Morning has turned to evening. The children on the berth are asleep. The husband is missing, God knows where. The train has come to a stop. But most importantly, the lady is leaning over me, staring me in the face, trying to wake me up, but not trying to disturb her sleeping children. "We don't have much time," she says. And me, in my groggy state, all I can muster up is a clueless, "Okay." What am I supposed to say? And then she looks at me in all seriousness and she says, "Do you have another cigarette?" Wait, what? "Do you have another cigarette?" she asked again. Less smile, more urgent this time. So I fumbled about it, and as soon as I had whisked out that cigarette, she grabbed it and made a run for the bathroom, stopped, turned. She didn't have to say anything this time. I knew exactly what to do. I whipped out my lighter and I gave it to her. And she took them both and left me there, just standing with my jaw on the floor, trying to process exactly what the hell has just happened. So I did. And it made sense now, because all that really intense staring had started when I had pulled out my cigarette. Well, there go illusions of my magnetic charm and rugged good looks. All the woman wants from me are my cigarettes. यहाँ पे ये हाल है तो कनिका के साथ तो कुछ नहीं होने वाला. If this is the case now, nothing's going to happen with Kanika. That was the dominant sentiment for a while. The next thing that happened was her husband walks in, holding 2 cups of chai. And he looks around for his wife, doesn't see her. And I am sitting there, half still in a state of shock, hoping to God he doesn't turn around and ask me where she is. Because I don't think in that state I would have been able to give him a straight answer. He thankfully didn't. He just put 1 cup of chai there and sat down and just sipping his chai. Now again, from where I'm sitting, I have the most fantastic view. I can see him with his back to the partition, sipping his chai. I can see her emerging from the bathroom, giving herself that one last look over, to make sure everything's in place. And I can see the transformation from, secret agent, cigarette grabbing person to demure, early 30s housewife with kids. I can see the transformation as she walks back to her place. And she walks back. And the husband just Says, where were you? The chai went cold. And she's like, well, I had a bit of a stomach ache, so I went to the bathroom. Wow. Right. I was trying really hard not to laugh, and I was rescued, thankfully, by Junior Dhruv finally having woken up. So we went back to discussing the merits and demerits of the United Nations Security Council, and she proceeded to give more fictitious details about her stomach ailment. And we just completely ignored each other for the next 6 to 8 hours. Then the train came to another stop. And this time I got to see the part of the performance I'd missed the first time. Her. Can you get me a cup of chai? Him. Fine. I'll call the chai wala. He wanted to call one of those guys who serve chai at the window. Her, as sweetly as possible. No. God knows how old the chai is in that container. Can you go to the tea stall and ask for a fresh batch? Him. Can't you make do without chai? Her, if possible at all, but sweeter than before. Please, it's just that I have a bad stomach and, masala chai would be great for me. Fine, I'll get it, he says, and walks off. Before he has even completed the motion of getting up from his berth and walking out and exiting the compartment, she is already looking at me. And it took me a second to realize that, this is what happened the last time. That's how she got in. Okay. Because I didn't know what I was supposed to do, and she's just staring at me. I'm like, what? Oh, right. So I am about to hand her, so I take out my cigarette and I'm about to hand it to her, and she walks up to me and she's about to take it. And her husband comes back. I know. I see him just in time to, I've got the cigarette like that. I see him just in time to just kind of do that little magician move. But there's no hiding the fact that me and his wife are looking right at each other, in close quarters. You know that moment when panic? Yeah, you get the idea, right? Yeah, sure. I'm not going to explain that anymore. She just panic, right? I can just But once again, she handles it brilliantly. She looks me in the eye and she asks me, do you have any paper soap? I say no. Then she turns to her husband and says, oh good, you've come back. I wanted to ask you to get you some more paper soap while you're going to get the chai. And the husband just, grunts or whatever, and some sound he makes, and, he just takes his wallet, which he left on the berth, and walks out. We wait a little this time. Patience. Then she moves towards me, and I hold out the cigarette. I also hand her a mint this time. So that she doesn't have to gulp down cold chai to mask her cigarette breath. She smiles. And as soon as she's left, I get a whack at the top of my head because Junior Dhruv has seen all of this. And his jaw is on the floor, just like mine was the first time this happened to me. She comes back this time, just in time as her husband had brought chai. Not only that, but in one sweeping motion, as she's walking by me, she actually manages to slip me back my lighter. Who is this woman? Where did you get one? So this happened, I think, at least another four times more, because 36 hours. It happened at least 4 more times. We would be completely oblivious to each other. Then the train would come to a halt, and she would say, listen, can you get me some chai? And I knew that in our language it meant I want a cigarette. I had even rationed them out to make sure that she doesn't run out of cigarettes. I know, such a sweet thing, right? Our entire operation by now had achieved such a level of efficiency that we actually didn't need to say anything to each other anymore. Do you have any soap paper? Is the last thing she ever said to me. We placed 4th at that debate out of 40 universities that had come from all over the world. The highest university from Delhi, college from Delhi. I have since then quit smoking. I have since then dated and been dumped by Kanika. I now fly cattle class, as Mr. Tharoor puts it. And since the Discman is finally a thing of the past, Jagjit now croons to me as an MP3 file on my smartphone. But two things haven't changed. The first is that I never, ever try to instantly judge a human being, who they are, or what is more important, what they are capable of. Based on an instant reaction. The second, of course, is that no mode of transport, no matter how advanced or fancy, will ever match the charm and the character of a journey on the Indian Railways. Thank you.